Hi everyone, welcome to Corporate Review. I'm your host, Ara Tapuzian, the City of Novi's Economic Development Director. And we're in the studio today because we've got a very special guest with us, Mr. Mike Finney, who's the President and CEO of the Michigan Economic Development Corporation, or the MEDC, as I like to affectionately call them. And Mike, it's certainly a pleasure to have you come here and talk to us. We were talking a little bit offline. I don't think we've ever had anybody from the MEDC, and certainly if we're going to have anybody from the MEDC, you'd be the person to have.
Well, Ara, thank you for having me. It's my pleasure to come out and just share a little bit of what's happening on a statewide basis with respect to economic development, and in particular, some things that may be happening here in Southeast Michigan and in your region.
Well, and I have to say first, before we start talking, my first experience with you was actually taking an economic development class when you were at Ann Arbor Spark, and you were one of our speakers at this event. And we had a week long of activities, and you've done it a few times. And the energy, the excitement made everybody want to go, oh, let's all go work for Ann Arbor Spark. And so fast forwarding, hearing Governor Rick Snyder coming in and the rumors going around. As a matter of fact, I think I had an email with you once when I thought you had gotten the job, and you emailed me back and said, no, I did not get the job. But certainly we're glad you finally in the end took the job. And how was all that? I mean, that transition from going from Ann Arbor Spark to the MEDC. I mean, you were initially with the MEDC many years ago, if I'm not mistaken.
Right. In fact, I originally met Governor Snyder when he was the chairman of the MEDC. He was the first chairman when Governor Snyder was in office, and really helped launch MEDC as this public-private partnership that it is. And that was my first experience with him. And then I ran off to New York State, to the Rochester area. And having been out there for about 3 years or so, then Rick Snyder contacted me about coming back to Ann Arbor and launching this cool little organization that was going to focus primarily on technology-based economic development, but would also look to bigger things as well. And we just had a wonderful 5-year ride there together. Did a lot of really good things. Definitely got Ann Arbor and Michigan on the radar screen of tech-based entrepreneurial types. Really got an awful lot of play from parts of the country that most people would think, like Silicon Valley and the Research Triangle and Boston and others, where they are really hotbeds of activity. We started to get Ann Arbor and Michigan on that same radar screen. Clearly, we were not there, but we were definitely doing an awful lot of the right stuff, focused on talent, focused on building an entrepreneurial ecosystem that could support entrepreneurs as they started to launch businesses, making sure there was available capital for them, et cetera. And the programs just seemed to work. And then Rick Snyder decided to run for governor, and he won. And Governor Snyder, of course, has said, hey, Mike, we really want to take this stuff and see, can't we build on those things that are really good and really have statewide potential, and those things that don't, that are more regional, obviously we keep those at the regional level. So I was really pleased to join him, and that email you sent to me, it was just premature. You were probably a couple months before the governor actually made the offer. So I didn't want to get out ahead of him because he may have had other options, and but he did make the offer, and I was more than pleased to become a part of his team.
That's terrific. I'll tell you, probably now more than ever, I think that us in Novi have nodded in agreement with a lot of things that the MEDC has been doing as far as the business attraction plans and retention efforts, and it's not an easy job. I mean, certainly the climate has been such that, especially Novi, we were on this big uphill. When I came in, hey, it was great, and it was pretty easy to do economic development, and then the bottom drops. And the bottom didn't totally drop on us per se. I think we were a little bit better prepared for it, but it certainly changed economic development. Talk about the business climate. I mean, certainly you've kind of had a plate full. You still have a plate full of things, and I know you wear a lot of hats, but talk about the business climate today, maybe versus from when you first came in.
Sure. Well, I mean, it's fair to say that, over the last 5-6 years or so, the economic bottom just fell right out of, frankly, every place, not just Michigan, but the United States and the world. And it was a bit of an economic meltdown. And Michigan, of course, led that. And unfortunately, the industries we were tied to were severely hit. We know that our auto companies went through, a couple of them anyway, went through bankruptcies, managed to come out of that, and thank God they did. And the good news is that, with Governor Snyder coming in, it was an opportunity to not point fingers and blame for what happened in the past, but to really focus on the opportunities that were there, to fix things that were fundamentally broke. In other words, it wasn't about just putting Band-Aids on Michigan. It was reinventing everything that we do. So reinventing our business cost structure and tax structure, eliminating the MBT, Michigan Business Tax, and going to a corporate income tax. Some 100,000 companies in our state are no longer subject to the business tax. So if you're any business type other than a C Corp, you're no longer subject to the business tax. That moved Michigan from being number 48, according to the Tax Foundation, to being number 7 in terms of our business tax. I mean, those are the kinds of things that typically don't happen in 14, 16, 18 months.
Right. And
Governor Snyder, with a lot of support from the legislature, was able to pull that off. That has very direct implications for businesses here in our state of all types. And it creates a platform for Michigan now to begin to move forward. And that's just one of many things that changed. We were the first state, and frankly, I think we're the only state to move away from just layering tax credit after tax credit in order to go after and try and bring business to our state. Right. It really was a very, very difficult game to play in one where the next state can simply offer $1 more in tax credits, and you simply lose that. But if we change our total business climate and really become a business-friendly state and fix things that are fundamentally wrong, then suddenly you can present a very different case to businesses about doing business here, locating here, growing here. It starts with talent and ensuring that we have the best and brightest workforce that businesses could possibly want, ensuring that our overall business cost is competitive, the environment where our state and local governmental entities make it easy for companies to come into their community and set up and operate. I mean, those are the kinds of things that are important that Governor Snyder has pushed, and we've advocated for that within MEDC. We've tried to make it simple for partners like yourself and others to work with us. Everything doesn't have to be centered in Lansing. We want to have things out in the communities where our regional partners can operate with support from us, as opposed to us trying to dictate to you how to get your job done.
Talk about that, the deployment of the BDMs, as we know, the business development managers from the MEDC, and how that's been part of the overall plan.
Yeah, we decided that there are things that really are core to MEDC and state government that we should probably do. For example, we have a $150 million incentive fund when I add in both the business, community development, and film industry. So we've got $150 million that we manage as incentives that we can use to help get projects done. That's probably not something we want to turn over to any of our regional partners to manage. It's a core activity that we should be responsible for. Right. But then there are a lot of other things that really are not necessarily core to us that really some of our regional partners do better. And so we have a strategy that says, let's enable our regional partners to do those things instead of bringing them in-house at MEDC. One of the good examples of that is the activity we have going with site selection consultants. And these are folks who work with companies all over the world on siting new facilities where there is expansion opportunities. That's an activity that, frankly, MEDC simply was out of the game and, frankly, did not do a very good job. So we are partnering with Southwest Michigan First in Kalamazoo, where they have built a lot of very strong relationships with a lot of the key site consultants around the country that we want to get connected to Michigan. And our only condition is that Southwest Michigan First can't just work for Southwest Michigan First. They have to work for every community in the state of Michigan. So we've got a program where they're helping to educate communities around the state on how to engage the site consulting community. We're bringing site consultants to the state, and we're taking them to various locations in the state so they understand the value proposition that every community has to offer. I mean, it's things like that where this core versus enabling strategy has proven to be a very popular way of getting our economic development work done. And the other thing, and most important part of it, is that we've said we will engage our regional partners as we develop strategies, as we plan our budget, as we begin to execute our programs. We won't just do that in Lansing, we will do it in partnership with regional partners. And that's become a big, big success story for us.
Well, I'm nodding my head in agreement a lot because I've been witness of that. And when you go back to the Southwest Michigan First, the site selector process, I was part of that. I can tell you that certainly for me, that was a big eye opener. I think folks think that all of us, are working with site selectors on a daily basis, and they certainly opened our eyes to say, it really isn't about you. You've got to be very collective. You've got to work collaboratively. And so certainly bringing those kinds of things to the forefront. I know you work with the Detroit Regional Chamber, and that model seems to be very interesting as far as, you know, capitalizing on our economic development agencies or private agencies or other entities that can help do those things. Mike, go back a second a little bit when we talk about the talent and the workforce. You know, one of the things that certainly you and I probably hear on a daily basis is we need more, we need specific talent. I mean, that's, in Novi especially, certainly we've got a lot of automotive in our area, supply base, and when I talk to companies that are hiring, and they are hiring, what I get is we need the engineers or we need that technical base, but they're not specific. How do we handle that?
Yeah, Michigan historically has had a wonderful talent base. Everything from, you know, skilled labor, semi-skilled labor, machinists, right on through to professional and technical talent. We've had a wonderful skill base here in our state, particularly with respect to supporting manufacturing, and that's manufacturing of all types, whether it's furniture, processed foods, or automotive components. We really have an incredible ability in this state to make things. But we lost some of that during the economic downturn. A lot of folks had to find opportunities in other places. And, but the good news is that we really maintained our core here. We have very strong universities who graduate an awful lot of technical and professional talent. We've historically had, you know, good programs to train, you know, skilled and semi-skilled labor, machinists, you know, journeymen, et cetera. And what we're trying to do is figure out how to reconnect all those key training and educational resources with businesses that we have in our state. So we're talking to businesses on a very regular basis, trying to understand what their talent needs are. And then we're taking that information and we're trying to work with our K through 12 system, our community colleges, our four-year institutions to ensure that their pipeline of talent is, in fact, first of all, looking at the opportunities that are immediately available with companies in our state, and then secondly, that they are encouraging that talent to consider opportunities here in the state of Michigan. And so we've got a very comprehensive program. We made a core part of our activities at MEDC what we call talent enhancement. We brought on board a person who had worked with me in Ann Arbor to lead that effort. And, you know, we've got a lot of really cool programs that I think are going to make a difference longer term. One example program we call Shifting Gears. The idea behind Shifting Gears was to find people who had lost their employment opportunities in the state during the downturn and help them transition into other things. So if you were working as, you know, an accountant at some big company, could you in fact work as an accountant or some financial leadership role in a small company or a startup? And would that be a good fit for you? So we put together a program to help people make that transition from the big company environment where a lot of folks lost jobs during the downturn into small and startup companies, and in some cases even starting their own businesses. We've had an incredible track record of success. I think we've gone through, you know, these have all been relatively small groups. We're ramping it up, but we've probably touched, you know, 400 people or so over the last 16, 18 months. And about 80% of those are finding their next opportunity within 6 to 9 months. And that's a pretty good track record. And so if we build on that, it's a great model for how to help folks find their next opportunity tied to their professional experience, but not necessarily in the exact same type of company they were in before. And that's just one example of many that's leading to, you know, this connectedness to the workforce that has been missing as we've tried to redefine and help, you know, displaced workers find their next opportunities. It's really that connectedness to employers and professional opportunities that are there right now. And in places this state and frankly the entire country is struggling with is in the engineering space, IT, software. Those are very high demand jobs right now. And they're jobs that we're trying to help get filled. But on the flip side of that, when you go to unskilled labor, you know, welders and machinists, are desperately needed right now. So if you have an interest in working in those kind of professions, now's the time to get connected with your local, you know, trade schools, community colleges, and frankly even some of the K through 12 system that have strong vocational programs. Now's the time to get connected because there are many opportunities for those types of professions as well.
Awesome. I'm talking to Mike Finney. He's the president and CEO of the MEDC, the Michigan Economic Development Corporation. We don't want you to go anywhere because we want you to watch this Pure Michigan ad, and we're going to talk a little bit about that in a few minutes. Don't go away.
25,000 mornings, give or take, is all we humans get. We spend them on treadmills, we spend them in traffic, and if we get lucky, really lucky, it dawns on us to go spend them in a world where a simple sunrise can still be magic. 25,000 mornings. Make sure some of them are pure Michigan. Your trip begins at michigan.org.
We're here with Mike Finney, again, President and CEO of the Michigan Economic Development Corporation. We're chatting about economic development and the exciting things going on in the state. Mike, we just watched one of the many fantastic Pure Michigan spots. I mean, I don't know if it's the music or the voiceover or all of it combined that does it, but that's been a home run for not only the state, I mean, it helps all of us. Can you talk a little bit about that? And certainly it's probably a little bit easier to get funding for that now. But how has that evolved? Because I know you've got some exciting things in the works for that campaign.
Yeah, so Pure Michigan has been a tourism brand for our state for a few years. And I don't know if it's the music or the voice. Frankly, I think it's more the assets. Right? Yeah. Michigan has an incredible portfolio of assets that, properly packaged with music and voice, there you go, is very compelling. Yep. And I think that's what the Pure Michigan campaign has been able to do, is to take these wonderful assets like Traverse City and Novi and Sleeping Bear Dunes and the Detroit Symphony and all the other assets that we have in this state, whether it's arts, culture, recreation, tourism, sports, you name it. Pure Michigan has been able to package that in a way that's very compelling, and it's allowed us to have one of the more robust tourism campaigns of any state. The thing that we decided to do with Pure Michigan is, because it was such a compelling tourism brand, we thought that we might have an opportunity to convert it into a business brand as well, and frankly just an overall brand for the state of Michigan. Sure. So we started that process very early on in Governor Snyder's administration to test the waters to see if it made sense as a business brand. And what we're finding out is that the business community is responding very well. In many cases, the connectivity between tourists and business leaders is very good, and so we have business leaders coming here for tourist purposes, only to discover that Pure Michigan as a business location could be very good as well. So we're just trying to build on that. We think it was a great brand to develop. Yep. We've now taken and really exposed it in ways that had not been considered before. And we have businesses like Hudsonville Foods and frankly Myers and even Coca-Cola brands that are now connecting with the Pure Michigan brand as a way of helping them sell their goods and services here in the state of Michigan. And we think that's a beautiful thing, because as Michigan-based businesses grow, they're going to hire more people, and at the end of the day, more and better jobs is the highest priority we have in this state. And we think Pure Michigan is a tremendous way for us to tell that message and tell that story across the country.
And I was just going to add that point. It is across the country. People are watching this. I know I've been out of town and been able to turn the TV on and able to see a Pure Michigan ad, and I think you probably hear that quite often. And now you're seeing folks like, you know, the Mackinac Island or Grand Rapids and these folks that want to be able to partner, Greenfield Village, that want to be able to partner. So certainly it's something that's worked. Talk a little bit about economic gardening. Everybody is, I think, kind of heard of it. Some make jokes because they use the word gardening. They think we're planting seeds, and we are, in a manner of speaking. And again, this is one of those changes that the governor and yourself have kind of brought to the state. We were always about tax incentives and throwing money out there, and you referenced that a little bit earlier, and we've changed that and tried to put a sort of a level field for everybody to deal with. Talk about the genesis of an economic gardening plan and how that's going right now.
If we got one significant complaint from existing businesses in the state, was that we weren't doing very much to help existing businesses, and we were doing everything we could to help businesses that were coming to the state from other locations. In other words, we were putting a lot of effort into hunting and very little effort into gardening. And so we decided to adopt a concept that's actually not new in the economic development profession. It's been around for a number of years, frankly started by a gentleman out in Littleton, Colorado. Frankly, Michigan had never considered it. So we decided to put an awful lot of our time and effort into helping Michigan-based companies. So you have to find out what their biggest challenges are. It's talent, it's access to capital, it's permitting, it's all the typical business costs, all these things that were making it difficult for existing Michigan-based companies. We decided to start working on fixing those. The first big fix was the Michigan business tax. We talked about that and the impact that that's had.
Right.
You know, S-corps, LLCs, any other corporate structure other than a C-corp, no longer subject to the Michigan business tax. Helping with talent. Some of the talent initiatives that we talked about earlier are helping businesses find the key talent that they need. Access to capital. We've got some wonderful programs to help businesses get the key capital that they need. If there's a business in Novi that's thinking about an expansion and their bank likes the deal, but they don't quite think the collateral is sufficient to support it, or the deal doesn't quite cash flow as well as the bank would like, and so they're holding off on making a commitment, they should be talking to us because we have resources that can help fill that collateral gap or participate in a loan to help get a deal over the hump so that a company can go ahead and make the expansion they need to make and hire more jobs. We can help with business-to-business connections. This is the one that I think is the best idea in the entire economic gardening toolkit that we have. We had two kickoff partners, Consumers Energy and DTE. And for those two companies, it's pretty easy to see the upside for them, right?
Sure.
If businesses are growing in our state, they're likely going to consume more power.
Right.
And one of those two entities are likely to be their supplier of choice. So it's very intuitive, but those two companies made a big commitment to buy more goods and services from Michigan-based companies. They each committed $250 million of new Michigan spend over about a 5-year period. So we're a little over a year into it. And the good news is, combined, they've already exceeded $300 million. So they're very close to meeting a 5-year commitment, and frankly, in less than 2 years. And we're feeling pretty good about where they are. The companies are motivated about it, and they're just buying more goods and services from Michigan-based companies. They're not given any competitive advantages or anything like that.
Right.
You've got to be a supplier that can provide them with something they need at a price that's competitive with what they've been spending out of state. That helps Michigan companies grow. In fact, our data says for every $200,000 of new Michigan business, if your company is getting $200,000 worth of new business from consumers or DTE or anyone else, that allows you to add 1 employee. So if these two companies combined spend $500 million more with Michigan-based companies, that's 2,500 jobs. There's no tax incentives involved.
Right.
It doesn't cost state and local government any money. It's just a business-to-business connection. And we've been very successful in building that program out. So we have a portfolio of tools that we provide to businesses. We call it Pure Michigan Business Connect.
Right.
But it's our version of economic gardening. 4 major pieces. It's about business-to-business connections.
Yep.
It's about access to capital, access to talent, and then access to business services that are embedded in state government, whether it's permitting, assistance with your tax issues,
Yeah.
The ombudsman services. We have a lot of services we offer inside of state government to help make it seamless for you to get your business done with the state of Michigan.
Okay.
It's pretty straightforward. It's very simple, but it's a new way of doing business, and it takes all the crazy tax credits off the table. That was the primary tool that we were using to try and help businesses out of our state come here. And frankly, tax credits are more an admission that you have a broken tax system, and you're trying to fix it by subsidizing or reducing the overall tax for selected companies as opposed to making the playing field even for all businesses. And that's what we're trying to do through our economic gardening effort.
Excellent. And it covers the whole wide range of the second stage, the entrepreneurial base, and even the interested party that certainly wants to come and develop within the state. Mike, the trade missions, the international business communities, I mean, this is something that's been always pretty big for Novi. We're a firm believer of we don't want to take from our neighbor, and to a certain extent, even taking from the next state is still shuffling the deck. And we've got a very large, as you know, a very large Asian base here in Novi. Probably 10% of our population is Asian. We've got probably over 65 Japanese businesses alone that's here in Novi. That's also been a nice change, a breath of fresh air, if you will, as far as tackling that and as far as going overseas. And the governor is, again, doing an Asian trip Talk a little bit about that, the importance of that, and sort of what's the scope and the outlook at the state level.
Right. Yeah, so we've talked a little bit about economic gardening, and that does apply to businesses of all types.
Right.
And they're primarily the businesses that are here in the state. But a key part of economic development is also making sure that our state is prepared when companies are in a growth mode to be on the radar screen and be a potential source for that corporate expansion. And unlike trying to go to other states, whether it's a neighboring state or frankly even a neighboring community within Michigan, and trying to pull companies from one community to another, from one state to another, that really is a zero-sum game.
Right.
But when companies are in a growth mode, companies like Google or you name the company, if they're in a growth mode and they're trying to find new sites for good business and strategic reasons,
right,
we want to make sure that Michigan is an attractive location for them. That's not taking from someone else.
Right.
It's simply being prepared to accept the normal growth that businesses are going through. So our efforts are international. We have a fairly robust program that we've put in place. MEDC really didn't have an international business team. We didn't have an export team. We now have about 19 people whose sole focus is centered around international business development, and that includes U.S., the domestic, the domestic part of it as well. So it's everything external to Michigan.
Okay.
But it does have an international flair. We've gotten involved in a fairly significant way in Asia. The governor made a trip to Korea, Japan, and China last fall. We have a trip that will be exclusively China coming up in September, another month or so. But we also are continuing our activities in other locations, including Japan, Korea. We're looking at other international locations like Israel, Mexico. We were in Germany and Italy in March of this year. And we just see some neat opportunities for companies that are in a growth mode to locate here in Michigan. And it covers everything from automotive, as you would expect,
right,
to IT and software companies, medical device companies, agricultural product companies, et cetera, because Michigan has strength in all of those. And so far it's going well. The flip side of it is Michigan-based companies that are trying to find their way into international markets through export. We've had in this state, probably the most active organization has been Automation Alley. They've had a pretty active export effort, but we need it to be statewide. And so we've put in place a fairly significant export team who's really driving efforts to get connected on an international basis where export is important. In fact, for the first time in many years, we're going to actually do a trade mission to China. We've got 20 companies that are lined up to participate in that, and it'll be at the same time that the governor will be traveling on our foreign direct investment effort in China. So we're going to have two things going at the same time. One is an export mission, the other one is a foreign direct investment from China. And we've got 20 companies that are going to be a part of that who are looking to get access into the Chinese market. So it's pretty exciting stuff. It's an important part of our activity. And certainly Novi has been a tremendous beneficiary of opportunities that have happened from the international business attraction efforts.
Believe it or not, we've got like literally 2 minutes left. I could sit and listen to you for hours because of not only your enthusiasm, but these are all things that have happened. These are all things that are moving forward. Mike, let me leave it with this, maybe like sort of a two-pronged, and got to condense it in time. What can we do, Novi as a city, to help with that continued effort? We do have great partnerships, but what do we need to be doing to help move that ball forward? And the second part of that is, where do you see the state going in the next 5-10 years?
Yeah, I'd say to the first question, just stay connected to us and to our regional partners. Oakland County is the primary regional partner that we work with. Get very connected with them. They're actively involved in all of our programs, and we are encouraging them to take our programs to all the local communities so that you are as connected as they are.
Right.
So that's point number one. And if you don't feel as if that works for you, then feel free to reach out to us directly, because we'll circle right back to them and help them connect to you in a way. So it's really about a partnership. In terms of where the state is going, Governor Snyder is very focused. I mean, he still is very focused on more and better jobs for our citizenry and quality education for our kids. And we've got to have those two things. If we fix those two things in this state over the next 5 years, I think we're going to be a real powerhouse again. It'll get us back to being a top 10 and upper echelon state. And we've been away from that for a number of years.
Right.
So more and better jobs, a quality education for our kids, and I think everything else starts to fall into place.
Great. Thanks, Mike, for coming today and talking to us. It's certainly a pleasure. Again, we could have talked for probably another even half hour about this, but we're out of time. And again, we hope you enjoyed today's program, and thanks to Mike for coming out. If you're interested in more information, really not just on Novi, but the state of Michigan, what's going on in economic development, we ask that you visit our site, investnovi.org. Until next time, I'm Ara Tapuzian. Have a great day. Bye.